Welcome to part 6 of the South Bend Shaper restoration. A lot more painting. Alright, we're going to get some parts painted today. We've got South Bend gray paint that I've purchased from Sherwin-Williams. Had that custom mixed to a mix setting I found online. We'll show you a close-up of the actual color mix code here in the video. With this, I typically use a catalyst hardener. So this is from Tractor Supply. I've found that it works pretty well. It's Magic brand catalyst hardener. So this is set up for a 16:1 ratio. So you're supposed to add half pint to 1 gallon of paint. So I've got a quart here, and I'm not even doing a quart worth of paint here. So I've got one of these little buckets here, and I've got it set up for a roughly 16:1 ratio, which would be, you take the 8:1 scale here, and only go halfway between the two marks for your secondary component. So I'm going to get that mixed up here, and then we'll get it thinned down, and we will be ready to paint. Again, using HVLP painter, so it goes on nice and clean, nice and easy. The difference with the hardener is the finish gets a little bit more glossy, so I've actually got a satin finish paint, and it's turned out fairly well on pretty much all of the South Bend pieces I've painted so far. So we'll try it out here, and we'll kind of show you guys a video of what we do. I think that's about it in terms of kind of background info. I still thin it down with acetone. I don't really have a ratio that I thin it down with in particular. There's not really a value, I guess, that I add in terms of the quantity. I just thin it down until it looks to the right consistency to my eye. I'm sorry, that's kind of unsatisfying, but that's kind of how I've thinned it down to use myself, just by trial and error and figuring out what works best. So let me grab a church key and we'll get this opened up and we'll get it thinned out. This is the kind of color that you get out of this paint. It's a nice South Bend gray. I think it matches fairly well with a lot of the older pieces that I have. It really seems to set well and matches pretty well with most of the pieces I've had over the years. So a trick that somebody pointed out online, which makes sense, is always pour it away from your label that shows your mix code so that you don't lose your mix code. So I'm going to turn this around because I need to see where I'm pouring it to. Hopefully I don't spill a lot here. And of course I did. We'll clean it up. Okay, I'm right at my 1. And I've made a terrible mess. Now we'll add our hardener. Mixed up quite a bit of paint here because I've got quite a few parts to paint. Okay. So now I need to add my half mark, so it looks like I went a little over the line, so I'm just going to add a little extra. Get us up to the right level. There we go. I found that this hardener doesn't really have a long timeline that requires, or a long shelf life that you have to let it sit to catalyze the paint before you use it. Likewise, it doesn't seem to be short-acting in the sense that you don't need to paint so quickly that you are rushing to get a job done. You can let this paint sit for a little while. I wouldn't let it sit all day, and certainly now that this has the catalyst in here, I will use all of this paint, or it will automatically harden on me. So it's kind of a one-shot. Just adding a little bit of paint thinner to get this to the consistency I like for painting. Here you can see I've got all the parts that were primed before. I'm now getting them covered with their nice South Bend gray paint coat. This paint is from Sherwin-Williams. I've shown you the paint codes before in this video, and they really mixed up a nice batch for me. It worked really well, went on nice and clean. Didn't have any issues with fish eyes or any other issues. It's also hardened up really well. It's going to be a really good durable finish for this machine. I've painted some other South Bend parts before and have had really great luck. It doesn't seem to react to the oil. The hardener really does a good job in keeping it kind of in pristine shape, even though it's kind of seeing a lot of petroleum-based products. Alright, got the cabinet ready to paint. Took a lot of time and stripped this and sanded this. Last time you saw this it was green, so it certainly looks quite different. The finish on it is pretty decent. It was very hard to take a lot of the paint off, so I ended up using a flat disc on an angle grinder to really strip down the finish. Numerous coats of stripper didn't really seem to work, so that turned out to be the best way to take care of this. I then followed up with a orbital sander and really kind of hit the surface to get rid of the angle grinder marks. I'm hoping that the heavy paint will kind of fill in any of the remaining gaps, if there are any. There were a few spots here that I welded in. There was a low voltage control box that hung on this side, so I actually welded in the holes that were here for the electrical boxes, so it will be back to kind of what originally would be a normal South Bend shaper that did not have the low voltage control system. Because I don't have that, it wasn't really worth trying to find that and set it back up. I've got all the original low voltage, or sorry, the regular controls for the shaper. Another thing we're going to try here is this little quart paint can lid here. I bought this on Amazon. We'll try it out and see if it works to keep the paint off the side of the can. So we'll get the primer in the paint gun here, and we will see if we can get this primed up today. So a lot of what you see here is actually grinding dust from when I welded and ground down the corners here. They were all cracked, I discovered, and not very well put together by South Bend. So I went through, welded all the corners. They actually had just used Bondo on the corners, so I filled all that in with weld and put a nice radius on the corners to make it look a little nicer. So hopefully it will be in a little bit better shape than it originally was. It's also been sprayed down with WD-40, which helps to keep the rust off, obviously. This has been a project over a couple of weeks, so I've had to ensure that this wouldn't start rusting away on me, so I sprayed it down. The finish I got while putting on the primer coat really turned out well, despite kind of having a rough metal finish. Again, I took the angle grinder to remove the paint, which left a somewhat rough surface texture. It's a 60 grit flap wheel I used, I believe. That in combination with using a 80 to 120 grit orbital sander disc left the surface fairly decently rough. It certainly wasn't glass smooth, but with the coat of primer on top and then the gray South Bend paint on top of that, it looked really well. It finished as well as I would want for a machine in my shop. It's certainly not showroom quality, but then again, I'm not really after showroom quality here. Here I'm cleaning off the ram. It had a coat of green paint on there as well, so I stripped that off using the brush wheel of my angle grinder. Here I am going through and painting the drawers. Didn't really take it down to bare metal in all places. It didn't really need to. I just roughed up the surface, especially inside. Got a good clean base for it. Primed and painted. So next steps for me will be to hopefully over the winter or into the spring get this inside and start reassembling this machine.